So you was this an assignment for you, or is this something you're working on?
So, Boscar approached me. I'm doing a whole year-long series on the manosphere, the bro influencers. So, this was actually the first of many. And Rogan is sort of the king of the bro manosphere. So, gotta start with the king.
Is he the king, or is he the intro drug?
I think he's still the king. I mean, his podcast has dipped a little bit, but he's still got the throne. He's got his Austin Comedy Club. Who's your king if he's not it?
The king of the manosphere?
Yeah.
I think you mentioned it kind of in your piece that he's all over the board. I think he's just a guy that, as he was rising to success, had a certain amount of freedom vocally that a lot of people felt constrained by. So for example, let's just use Tucker Carlson and Jon Stewart as two ends of a spectrum of liberal and conservative. They necessarily don't say what they want to say. They kind of speak within the confines of their audience. Joe Rogan kind of cultivates his own audience that doesn't really exist within those binaries necessarily.
Yeah. I mean, he's not Tucker Carlson. He's not a traditional political commentator. And when I say manosphere, I'm not totally using that like in a negative connotation. I mean, I think in a lot of sense, it's a result of a lot of masculinity, straight white guys ending up on YouTube together and cultivating their audience. But no, he's not a typical right wing Fox News guy. He just slowly, as you said in your intro, just sort of evolved that way. And especially over the last even year or two, that's really accelerated.
What did someone say? The manosphere is a baseball, and Randy Johnson's fastball made him the king of the manosphere. I mean, like I said, I think he's an interesting figure. But how does he go? And this is the part of his rise that I find the most interesting, because he does exist in this moment where celebrity is extremely a relative term, where I think we're old enough, and I know I got you by a few years, but you're still old enough to remember where celebrity meant like people knew who you were. If you mentioned it to your parents, they knew who that person was. They may not know, like Michael Jackson, for example. My kids know who Michael Jackson is, and he was dead before some of them were born, right?
Yep.
That's a celebrity. Michael Jordan, even Wayne Gretzky. I know who Wayne Gretzky is. I have never in years of life watched a hockey game, but I know who Wayne Gretzky is, right? Joe Rogan, there's people that love his show that don't know, outside of maybe UFC, the news radio stuff. They don't know his comedy bits. He doesn't have a popular. You would think he'd take that and go do, shitty Netflix specials, but he doesn't. It's like he knows what he's good at. And he does that thing. So how does he go from being an unknown to the largest voice in media?
Well, I think when you say unknown, that's overstating it. I mean, like you said, I even know who was back in the early 2000s. I mean, Fear Factor was like a primetime show on NBC, and it was this crazy reality show where, it was actually kind of like a YouTube show, but 20 years ago, where he made people do like crazy stunts, like be in a giant vat of spiders or snakes, and it was just to see how long people would last while doing the dumbest shit imaginable. But that kind of disappeared. He got canceled. And he tells the story in this like Netflix comedy special. He said it's because they had them eat donkey cum.
Yeah.
And that was like, it went too far for the executives. So that's when they canceled them. So that was, I think, in like 2003, 2004. Well, after that, I think a few years later, he was doing some more stand-up tours. And he was known a bit for being like the UFC commentator because, you know, the UFC was still marginal at the time, but it was slowly getting a little momentum. But so I think it was in 2007 is when he first started the podcast. And at the time, I mean, 2007 podcasting didn't really exist hardly at all.
Not really.
You know, there was like, you know, like the old Ricky Gervais show, you know, NPR, like This American Life was being turned into a podcast, but he was a bit of a pioneer in podcasting, which probably helped a bit. But I think that he was one of the first to really do sort of a hangout show. And the hangout show, you know, there's a lot of content like that. I mean, even this conversation a bit is a bit like a hangout show, right? But it's like a casual conversation. It can be meandering. You joke around a lot. You just kind of feel like you're hanging out with kind of like friends. And so that's something that he was good at, is not only just like hang out with people, but a lot of times like really funny or really interesting people. You know, he would have his like rotating you know, group of comedians, friends of his. And then also just like he would have on like these like UFO conspiracy theorists, like
yeah, people you've never heard of unless you
yeah,
were on certain corners of the internet. Yeah.
and people that would not be in mainstream media because no one would take them seriously. And he would take them seriously in a lot of ways. I mean, part of what's interesting about listening to him is that he often, I don't even know if it's like playing along with them, but he does take people seriously. I mean, he sometimes like will call out bullshit, but a lot of times when he has like even conspiracy theorists telling stories, he often will kind of, you know, go along with what he's saying and kind of tends to agree. Now on a next show, he might say something completely different, but you get the sense of like being at a bar with this UFOologist or a comedian or whatever, and just shooting the shit. And so I think that he took that form and, you know, again, just slowly built this audience at a time when, as you say, there was a fragmentation of the mainstream, you know.
You know, the fear factor thing, and in UFC, how do you think the commentary there helped kind of cultivate that everyman persona? There was something about him on those early days of Fear Factor where he would even have this, and he talks about it on his show. He's talked about it in interviews, because I do think that's something about that show that was jarring for him. Seeing the limits, or maybe the lack of limits, of what people are willing to do for a couple of bucks, because it's not that much money at the end of the day. Like $10,000 may seem like a lot, but it's like I can't stop working for $10,000. I have to still do this show. I can't tell you guys to go fuck yourselves and you know, hang out with hookers all day.
You do underestimate though that the call, you know, even if it's not money for, you know, doing something crazy on TV. I don't want to go too far into it, but I was almost on Married with at First Sight like 10, 15 years ago. And I almost got married for $1,000 an episode. So
was it 30 episodes?
No, it was like 12. So at most I was going to get married on TV for $12,000.
Were you going to be able to bang the chick?
Well, that's if you get
you
married,
would hope, right? That's not in the contract, then I don't know if you could do it.
I probably said that in my interview.